Alrighties, ladies and gentlemen, it is mythical time. We are going to be hitting up on part 3 of the mythical tier list, guys. We're going to start some quick battles, background multi-battles, now that we have that wonderful feature, while we talk about the next batch of mythicals on our list. Guys, I regret to understand that missed Commodus on my last piece. Somebody in the comments let me know that he was already on the list and I didn't talk about him, and I apologize for that, guys. There was a recording error on my end, so today I took him out of the list. We're gonna go back over his kit and see if I even put him in the right spot, and yeah, slot him right back in there for you guys. Hold up, click the link in the description right now to get a free Uugo as well as 2 more free epic champions as you level up. Here are the steps to get yours. Step 1, log out of Plarium Play on PC and uninstall. Step 2, click the link in the description and register with a brand new email. Step 3, launch Raid and complete the tutorial. Step 4, go to your inbox and claim your first champ. This is an amazing account start to Raid, so click the link and start now. So first up, we have good old Commodus Dark Smile here, guys. He is a creepy little bugger, isn't he? He lives up to his aesthetic with his kit. He's a nuisance and a menace in the arena. On the A1, he attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit decreases the target's defense by 2 turns, stacking up to 20, so a little built-in cruelty on the first form. Each hit also steals 10% of the target's turn meter. Very annoying A1, very solid A1. On the A2, we got an AoE buff strip from all enemies and places block active skills debuff on them for 2 turns. Also steals 20% of the target's turn meter from each enemy under a block active skills debuff. So in the arena, that's up to 80% turn meter, which is basically an extra turn at that point. On the A3, he's got attacks one enemy, deals 100% of the target's turn meter, also locks out the champion by putting the target's skills on cooldown. Very strong. 3-turn cooldown all the way around. And then on the passive, whenever this champion loses 30% HP or more in a single turn, deals damage to the attacker equal to 30% of this champion's max HP, occurs once per turn. He does have good base HP, so that will hurt. Also, when this champion loses 30% HP or more in a single turn, places a shield buff on them equal to 30% of this champion's max HP for 2 turns. So not only is he going to hit you like a truck, but he's going to put a shield up big enough to equal all of the damage that he just dealt. It is a very strong kit. His first form is a nuisance. As I said earlier, the amount of turn meter stealing that he is doing is a problem. And then he goes to the second form and he becomes this insane bomb champion. And look at this guy. It's like if the Joker and the Fat Man had a kid and threw it down the stairs. On the A1, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 50% chance of placing a bomb debuff for 2 turns. Heals this champion by 10% of their max HP for each bomb debuff placed. He is so survivable in this form. Not only is he healing, but his max HP goes even higher on this second form. On the A2, attacks all enemies, places 2 bomb debuffs on all enemies for 2 turns, instantly detonates all bomb debuffs on enemies with stone skin or enemies whose HP is less than this champion's. Which, newsflash, with that base HP, that's going to be pretty much everybody. Then places a stun debuff for 1 turn on all enemies who had their bomb debuffs detonated by this skill. Again, HP based, he is going to hit like an absolute truck. Bombs do so much damage. Their only weakness is polymorph. They are the best offense against stone skin, and where he instantly activates them on targets under stone skin, it's insane. Honestly, you can kill a UDK that hasn't been touched just by putting bombs on his stone skin. It's insanely good. I do it all the time with my Lord Shazar. It's so fun to watch. On the A3, heals this champion by 50% of their max HP, also places weaken debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, then grants an extra turn. The way this guy works is crazy. So A3 steals 100% of the target's turn meter and locks them out. Let's just say he's hitting their fastest champ. He goes again. Extra turn, if you will. Metamorph. Extra turn. A3, Killer Encore. AoE weaken. Extra turn, bombs on everybody, and detonates them. It's insane. And then on the passive, has a 100% chance to reflect all bomb debuffs placed on this champion back to the attacker. also has a 30% chance to reflect all other debuffs placed on this champion back to the attacker, and heals this champion by 20% of their max HP whenever an enemy is killed by a bomb. This guy is nearly impossible to kill, he does an obscene amount of damage, and he does an obscene amount of control on the first form. He is so good. My only problem with Commodus is the fact that he's basically arena only. You are not using bombs outside of maybe Bommel for a boss fight. You are not, I mean, you can use him for his AoE weaken, and if he's your only mythical, then yeah, obviously you're going to use him everywhere. But he's not the best out there. Very niche. And again, polymorph hurts him. So unless he's built in like 9-piece feral, which, oh my gosh, if you build him a 9-piece feral, you are a freaking monster. Honestly, I think he is kind of limited, and that is why Commodus Dark Smile is going to get, actually, I think he's going back at where he was, a flashy. So he's really good, but because he's so niche in his use cases, or rather narrow-minded, if you will, in his use cases, he can't go very high, in my opinion. He's still really good, and if I got him, oh my god, it'd be a game changer, but he's nothing crazy. All right, next up on the list, we have Crixia from the Knights Revenant. Night Queen Crixia. There she is. There's the stats. Not too bad. I'll be honest, going into this champion, I was very underwhelmed. I know early on she was like game-breaking meta, so good. This is going to show you how the power creep in this game has took off just since she was released. On the A1, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 50% chance of increasing the duration of all debuffs on the target by 1 turn. Not bad. On the A2, places decreased resistance and block buffs on all enemies for 2 turns, also decreases each target turn meter by 20%. I will say this is very nice because it plays to her weakness, which we will discuss here in a moment. On the A3, attacks all enemies, removes all buffs from all enemies, and also increases the cooldowns of all enemy skills by 3 turns. And then on the passive, immune to stun debuffs, which is nice, and increases this champion's accuracy by 1 point for every 2 points of resistance that they have. Kind of like a Mythrala situation, but I think in reverse, you basically get more accuracy by trying to prevent debuff placement. It's a strong passive, I'll give you that. The passive is probably the best part of her kit, if I'm being honest. At least in this form. The reason being, the recent fusion Fabian does this but better. He's also got an extra turn baked into his move. So honestly, if you're using her for a lockout, Fabian was a better option. If I could have gone for him, I would have, and then I would have been very disappointed if I pulled a Crixia. The only reason I would still be excited is for the second form, and the second form, in my opinion, is where it's at for Crixia. On the A1, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 50% chance of decreasing the duration of all debuffs on a random ally by 1 turn. Very good. The A2 attacks all enemies, places a block debuffs and a increase resistance on all allies for 2 turns, then fills the turn meter of all allies by 20%. Very good skill. It's like a Oella-esque move, which I love Oella. And then on the A3, full cleanse for the entire team, then resets the entire team except this champion by reducing their cooldowns by 3 turns. Very, very powerful A3 here. I love this second form. On the passive, immune to sleep debuffs, increases this champion's speed by 1 for every 10 resistance that they have. I mean, outside of like Kymar and Siphi, maybe Easter Dream Song, I can't tell you how much I run into sleep anywhere outside of like the spider's den. Yeah, sleep is not a concern. I think if you swapped the crowd control between the 2 passives, I think she would be one of the better mythicals in the game for PvP still, because she would be good against Armands at that point. I mean, yeah, she would still be bad affinity, but I think that she would have a far better place if they swapped the crowd control forms on these passives. But this second form saves her. And the reason I say that I think she's very underwhelming is because of her affinity. She's Spirit Affinity. Magic is very prominent in the current arena meta. So she's going to get hard countered as far as her affinity is concerned a lot, rendering this first form very niche. Whereas on her second form, she's supporting your team, buffing them up, resetting their cooldowns, and as well as increasing her own stats, because she's going to be buffing with increased resistance, which is going to in turn increase her speed, making her far more viable. So for Crixia, the Night Queen, I'm not, again, overly impressed with that first form, but that second form is really strong. I will put her in a high flashy between Aphodus the Hive Lord and Nell Blackteeth. I have worried about Nell being in the opponent's team. I have not once worried about Crixia. I've yet to run into one that's a problem. And that's at my level of arena. I'm not even one of those big kids who's playing around with +4 mythicals. I don't even have one yet, and I'm not scared of Crixia anymore. Could be worse. Could be a lot worse. But that first form could be way better. Alrighty. Now, coming in to Siegfried the Nephilim, used to be the worst mythical in the game. Then he got a buff that completely broke the game and completely broke him. And he's now arguably one of the best mythicals in the game. Outside of his crazy damage, I think he's actually kind of underwhelming. Outside of his sheer damage, I'm not that impressed. But hey, let's go through the kit. On the A1, attacks one enemy 2 times. The first hit transfers all debuffs from this champion to the target, and the second hit then increases the duration of all debuffs on the target by 1 turn. That's nice. On the A2, attacks all enemies. Each critical hit fills this champion's turn meter by 25%. So he's getting an extra turn if he crits on all 4 enemies in arena. Resets the cooldown of the Rage of the Nephilim skill if this attack kills an enemy. Resets the cooldown of all of this champion's skills if this attack kills 2 or more enemies. That is great when it hits hard, but honestly, I've never been really messed up by this skill. The one that messes you up is Rage of the Nephilim. Attacks one enemy, ignores 50% of the target's defense. Will attack all remaining enemies with any surplus damage if the initial target is killed, and fully heals this champion if the initial hit kills an enemy. This move, I swear it has like a 12 times multiplier because I've never once survived that initial strike of Rage of the Nephilim. I might survive the surplus damage, but I am not surviving that initial hit. I swear it's programmed to insta-kill anything. This skill is what makes him so good. Literally, I think that's it. Because as far as his passives are concerned, I think he's one of the worst. He can't metamorph at will. He can only metamorph whenever he is the last living ally. It's bad. It's really bad. Honestly, I don't see at all why they left this as a conditional metamorph. If they had dialed back on the buff to the rest of his kit and just given him a manual and not passive driven metamorph, I think he would have been absolutely fine. I think he would have been more than fine, in fact. I think he would have been great. But instead, they left this weird passive metamorph. And then on his other passive, if this champion is about to get killed by a fatal hit, blocks the incoming damage, and places block damage buff on this champion for 2 turns, very similar to the Cheshire Cat, which that passive is really strong. Heals this champion by 50% of their max HP and fills their turn meter by 100%. Chances are, if this is happening and you have a competent nuker, he's going to be the only one left standing, which is then going to cause him to metamorph and go to a really strong support form with an AoE A1 that heals all allies by 20% of the damage inflicted, an A2 that fully cleanses all allies, then heals them by 30% of their max HP and places block debuffs on them for 2 turns, and then revives all dead allies with 50% HP and turn meter, then places block damage on all allies for 2 turns. He is so strong. Honestly, I think there is a case that could be made where you build for a support Siegfried, just purposefully get all of your teammates killed, because he also on the passive decreases damage taken from skills by 20%. So he is providing a ton of block damage, a ton of healing, block debuffs, and just giving free damage reduction, at least to himself. I don't know if that works on everyone. And then he has a manual metamorph to go back to the first form. It's kind of silly. It's kind of silly. I'm not going to lie. I don't like how they handle his metamorph, but I think his kit's really solid. Honestly, though, I have a hard time judging him as a proper mythical because of that passive metamorph, and that really hurts his placement on the list. So, where are we putting this monster of a mythical? Honestly, he's tasty. He's tasty because Rage of the Nephilim is just that good, but I don't think he's better than Allah's, especially not for my account, simply because Alaz is not only bringing the AoE block damage, but he's also bringing the AoE counterattacks. Not to mention the crowd control and the provoke. Even if that is single target, I think it's just that strong. I think Siegfried is amazing, and I will cackle maniacally if he is my first mythical, but I think there are far better choices. Finally, for this video, we are looking at the Star Sage himself, Star Sage Galathier. I have a really hard time figuring out where I want this guy. I will be honest. I will probably get murdered in the comments for where I end up putting this guy, just because I know he's classified as like one of the best. I know Scratch, who has like a ton of mythicals and stuff, was beside himself when he got a hold of his. And while I would be ecstatic, I don't know that I'd be as giddy as I would be for others. He's got an AoE A1 that fills the turn meter of all allies by 10% and also fills the turn meter of each ally by an extra 5% if they have any active buffs placed on them by this champion. So a conditional 15% turn meter fill on the A1. On the A2, full cleanse, then heals all allies by 25% of this champion's max HP. He's got good base max HP, tied for the fastest base speed in the game, so he's good. He's got great stats. Also fills the turn meter of all allies by 15% again, and places block debuffs on them for 2 turns. Then on the A3, revives all dead allies with 50% HP and turn meter, and places Perfect Veil on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. On the passive, this champion receives 5% less damage for each 100 resistance on this champion, stacks up to 25%. I am not building anyone with 500 resistance yet, but hey, if you are, kudos, enjoy that 25% damage reduction. Also prevents this champion's death and keeps them alive on 1 HP when receiving fatal damage, then equalizes their HP with the average HP level of the team. I think that is very niche. I don't know when that passive is going to really come into play on the active effect, but this first form is really strong, and I think he's kind of a reverse situation Crixia for me. I'm far more excited about his first form than I am his second, which has an AoE A1 that decreases the turn meter of all enemies by 10% and an additional 5 if they are under block active skills, decreased resistance, or stun placed by this champion. It's strong, but I'd rather be boosting my turn meter. The A2 is an AoE before attacking, buff strips all enemies, then places block active skills for 2 turns. This attack will not trigger counterattacks. This is strong, but honestly, I like Kimmy better as a buff stripper personally, even if Kimmy's only stripping 1 buff. On the A3, places a increased resistance on all allies for 2 turns, then places decreased resistance on all enemies for 2 turns and a stun debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. It's not a bad move at all, and he looks really freaky. I like the first form a lot better personally. And then on the passive, increases his champion's accuracy equal to 75% of their resistance when placing debuffs or activating instant effects. So 75% of that resistance is converted into accuracy whenever he does any of the shenanigans on his alternate form. Great stat distribution. I will give him that. I like those champions that convert stats as they're needed. And the active effect, if an enemy's accuracy is higher than this champion's resistance, has a 50% chance of transferring any crowd control except for sheep back to the enemy when placing these debuffs on this champion. It's a strong passive. It's a strong kit. I think he is a fantastic champion, and honestly, maybe I'm just underrating him because I've seen very little Galathier gameplay. I have fought very few Galathiers, thank goodness, and yeah, I don't pay attention when I see him in any of the content creators' videos, simply because, I don't know, maybe I'm just missing those videos, I don't know. But Star Sage Galathier, in my opinion, is great, but not super high on my wish list. However, I cannot in good conscience put him any lower than here. I can't do it. I just love Alas that much, and I think he would be that beneficial to my account. I just can't. I can't put Galathier above Alas. I want to. Scream at me in the comments if you want to. For me, Alas is just that solid. Star Sage Galathier is fantastic. I would be beside myself if he were my first mythical. He puts out so much turn meter in his kit that I just can't deny that first form's power. But that's where he's got to go for me. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. I'm sorry. So yeah, guys, that's going to be it for this part 3 video of the mythical tier list. What do you guys think? Who do you think I snubbed? Who do you think I overplayed? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing from you guys. Where do you think the other 5 mythicals coming in the last installment of this series for a while will go? Do you think Gallius will forever be all by himself? Or do you think there will be somebody in the next group who will join him? Let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments below. I've been Kurodor. Stay tanky.